Morning sunlight spilled across Ethan Hale's kitchen as the smell of coffee mingled with the faint hum of sprinklers outside. He had the kind of quiet house that reflected discipline, neatly arranged tools, folded files on his desk, framed commendations from his years in the Fire Marshal division. Then came 3 hard knocks on the door. Not the polite kind, the kind that demands. When he opened it, 2 men stood there in gray uniforms, reflective vests slightly too new, badges clipped to their shirts. One had a clipboard, the other a handheld meter that wasn't even on. "Morning, sir. Fire inspection. HOA request," the taller one said. Ethan's eyes flicked from their boots to their ID cards. Something was wrong. No department watermark, no state insignia. He had personally designed those years ago. Still, he said nothing, just nodded and let them in. They walked around, tapping smoke detectors, pretending to measure outlets, scribbling notes. Ethan followed quietly, his military-trained composure masking the storm in his mind. After 15 minutes, they handed him a form. "You've got several non-compliance issues. Total fine's $1,200. Payable to the HOA." He scanned the document. No reference number. Wrong format. No state header. He smiled faintly. "All right, thanks for coming." As they left, one muttered, "Have a good day, sir," without meeting his eyes. The moment the door shut, Ethan set the paper on his desk next to a black leather folder. He opened it. Inside was his real badge. The gold glint of State Fire Marshal stared back at him. He leaned back, whispering to himself, "Let's see just how deep this fire runs." He opens his laptop and starts a new case file. HOA fire scam. Preliminary inquiry. That night, rain whispered against the windows as Ethan examined the inspection form under a lamp. His trained eyes dissected every detail. Serials that didn't exist, signatures with missing dots, ink inconsistencies that screamed printer at home. He cross-referenced the inspection authorization code. It didn't match any state database. "So, someone's pretending to be us," he murmured. He leaned back in his chair, the low hum of his ceiling fan matching his steady breathing. He wasn't angry, yet. He was calculating. On the wall behind him hung a framed photograph of him and his late mentor, Chief Marshal Sanders. The old man's words echoed in his head. "People don't play with fire, son. Fire plays with them." He poured another cup of coffee, eyes cold and resolute. "You picked the wrong house," he said to the empty room. He reaches into a drawer and pulls out a thick manila folder labeled State Audit Authority, Priority Complaint. The next morning, the neighborhood glowed under a clean blue sky. Ethan's boots crunched the gravel path leading to the HOA's glass-front office, a small building trying too hard to look official. Inside, the air smelled like cheap coffee and perfume. Behind the desk sat Linda Pratt, the HOA president. Sharp suit, sharper attitude. "Ah, Ethan. We heard you had a visit from our inspectors. Everything all right?" she said with a rehearsed smile. He studied her for a long second before replying. "Depends what you call inspectors." Her smile didn't waver. "Well, we're ensuring fire safety compliance. Some homes have been fined for violations that don't exist," he interrupted, placing the fake citation on her desk. "Tell me, Linda, who certified these men?" A flicker, the kind of fear that hides behind arrogance. Then she laughed. "Don't scare me with technicalities, Ethan. You know how it is. Paperwork, safety codes." He leaned in, voice steady but sharp as a blade. "No, what you're doing is impersonating a state official. That's not a technicality." The air shifted. Her smile cracked, but only for a second. He slid a small black USB across the desk, neatly labeled Evidence. "Keep it. You'll need it when the investigation starts." He turned to leave, her voice cracking behind him. "You can't threaten us, Hale." Without looking back, he said, "I don't make threats. I file reports." As he exits, her assistant picks up the phone and whispers, "He knows." That night, Ethan hosted 3 neighbors in his dimly lit garage, Mrs. Delaney, Mr. Cho, and a young single mom named Tara. Each brought paperwork, the same fake inspection forms, The same fine amounts, the same signatures. Mrs. Delaney's hands trembled as she spoke. I paid them last week. They said they'd report me to the city if I didn't. Ethan's jaw tightened. He copied every document, photographing them under precise lighting. His investigative side was fully awake now, the methodical calm that came right before the storm. You've all been victims of impersonation, he told them quietly. You'll get your money back, but not from me. When they left, he stood alone, staring at the mountain of evidence now growing on his desk. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. He walked to the window. A dark SUV sat parked across the street, headlights off, engine running. It stayed there for a long minute, then drove away. Ethan whispered, "They're watching." Good. Let them. The next morning, Ethan's mailbox held an unmarked envelope. Inside, a printed photo of him from last night, standing beside Mrs. Delaney in his garage. Across the image, a handwritten message in red ink. "Drop it, Marshal. We know who you are." For the first time, his pulse spiked, not from fear, but fury. They knew his identity, which meant someone from inside the HOA office leaked it. He turned the paper over, faint smudge of a watermark. He scanned it under light, printed on HOA letterhead paper. He clenched his jaw, the paper curling in his fist. "You're going to regret that," he muttered. Then he unlocked a small drawer in his office. Inside was his official field recorder engraved with his badge number. He clicked it on. Case log hail Ethan D. Formal escalation. Suspected organized fraud involving impersonation of state officials. Beginning full evidence documentation. The red recording light blinked, reflecting in his eyes like a small flame. Ethan needed them to slip, to feel safe, so he played along. That evening, he attended the HOA meeting in the community hall, fluorescent lights buzzing, neighbors chatting about lawns and dues. Linda Pratt stood at the podium, smiling too widely. "We've completed 12 successful fire inspections this month." "Safety first, everyone!" Ethan sat in the back, silent, recording everything. When the Q&A opened, he raised his hand slowly. "Linda, I'm curious. Who certified your inspectors?" Her eyes flickered, just briefly. Then she said, "Oh, they're state certified, of course." A few homeowners nodded, reassured. But Ethan's smirk was almost invisible. "Good," he said softly, leaning forward, "because I'd love to meet them again." His phone vibrated quietly on his knee, a text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions. You're out of your depth." He looked up at the podium and met Linda's gaze. She looked away first. The following morning, Ethan woke to the faint smell of something chemical. Not gas, not smoke. Something synthetic. Faint, almost ghost-like. He stepped outside barefoot, scanning the yard. His sprinkler heads glistened oddly in the sunlight. He knelt down, ran a finger across one. Oily residue. Not water. They'd tampered with his irrigation line. He followed the faint trail to his side gate. The lock had been picked clean, but there was no sign of forced entry. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. He closed his eyes for a second, steadying his breath. "You want to play with fire?" he whispered. "Then let's burn." He pulled his phone, opened the hidden State Marshal app, and began cataloging evidence, photos, chemical analysis, digital timestamps. His screen flashed internal access requested, local division code 72A. Someone from inside his department was watching. That afternoon, a white pickup pulled into his driveway. A man stepped out, tall, confident, dressed in the exact same gray inspector vest as before. "Afternoon, sir. Just following up on the inspection," the man said, flashing a fake badge with casual ease. Ethan tilted his head, pretending confusion. "Really? Didn't you come by last week?" The man hesitated. "Oh, no, sir, that must have been my partner. I'm just confirming the fine payment." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sure, come in." He led the man inside, guiding him toward the living room. On the wall behind the sofa hung Ethan's real State Marshal badge, framed beside his service commendations. The inspector noticed and froze. Ethan stepped closer, his voice quiet but cold. You have 5 seconds to tell me who sent you before I make a very official phone call. The man's eyes darted to the door. He bolted. Ethan didn't chase, just watched as the pickup peeled away, tires screeching. Then he took out his phone and dialed a number. This is Marshal Hale, code 542. I'm declaring an identity fraud alert. Active threat. I'll handle it locally. On the other end of the line, the operator hesitated. Sir, the report was already filed. By your superior. Later that night, Ethan sat in his truck, rain tapping against the windshield. He called his old friend, Captain Royce, from the state field office. Royce, someone's filing reports under my name. I need a trace. Static crackled. Then, Ethan, you might want to sit down for this. That report came from your HOA's office. They used your department's digital signature. Ethan's hands clenched around the steering wheel. You're telling me they hacked the state system? Looks that way. But whoever's behind it, they had help. Internal help. Ethan stared out at the dark road, heart pounding. He could feel the invisible web tightening. The HOA, the fake inspectors, the forged state clearance, and someone in his own ranks pulling the strings. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating a car in his rearview mirror. Same black SUV, same silent watcher. 2 days later, Linda Pratt called for a special HOA safety session. Every homeowner was told attendance was mandatory. The hall was packed, whispers, nervous glances. On stage, Linda stood beside a projector, pretending calm. We've had some confusion about our fire safety initiative, she began. I'd like to clear things up. Ethan sat near the back, recording quietly. Behind her, 2 men in gray uniforms stood guard, the same fake inspectors. Our goal, Linda continued, is to maintain compliance and protect our community from state overreach. The words hit Ethan like static. State overreach. That wasn't a mistake, it was a message. He raised his hand. Would you care to explain what kind of protection involves falsifying government documents? Murmurs filled the room. One of the fake inspectors tensed, hand slipping to his belt. Linda's voice cracked. You're disrupting an official meeting, Ethan. He stood, voice low but cutting. You're impersonating the state. That's not a meeting. That's a felony. Before anyone could move, the lights flickered, and the fire alarm blared. Panic rippled through the hall. Neighbors shouted, chairs clattered, lights dimmed to red. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He moved toward the panel near the exit. The alarm wasn't triggered by smoke. It was remote activated. He recognized the code pattern flashing on the screen. 4-digit override, same sequence used by field agents. They're not just pretending anymore, he muttered. They've got access. As he helped an elderly man outside, he spotted one of the fake inspectors slipping out a side door, clutching a metal briefcase. Ethan followed. Quiet, steady. The man loaded the case into a black SUV, the same one from the nights before, and drove off. Ethan pulled out his recorder. Case file update. Confirmed crossover between HOA and compromised fire access protocols. Pursuing lead. He plays back the audio later that night and hears an unfamiliar whisper underneath his own voice. Stop recording. Marshal. At dawn, Ethan stood at the edge of his property, eyes fixed on the lake behind his house. His safe place. The still water reflected a bruised sky. He thought of walking away. He thought of letting it all go. But that's not who he was. His phone pinged. A new message. Inspection follow-up scheduled for 10 a.m. Non-compliance warning. Final notice. It was sent from the official state Fire Marshal account. His account. He stared at it for a long time before whispering, You used my name, my authority, my badge. He turned toward the horizon, where a small trail of black smoke curled up, right from the HOA maintenance shed. He sprinted toward it, adrenaline flooding through him. When he arrived, the shed's door was locked, smoke seeping from the cracks. Inside, paper burned, forms, ledgers, binders, evidence. And on the floor beneath the flames, a silver plaque engraved with his name. Ethan D. Hale, State Fire Marshal. They were erasing him. He grabbed his badge from his pocket, staring at it through the smoke. Then I'll burn it all back into truth. The smell of burned paper lingered long after the flames died. Ethan knelt in the ashes, gloved hands sifting through charred fragments. Every piece felt like a crime scene, a story erased. Then he found it, a half-melted USB stick, its casing warped but not destroyed. He slipped it into a sterile evidence bag. Behind him, sirens wailed in the distance, local fire units responding. He didn't move. He was the fire authority, yet here he stood, watching imposters torch his credibility. When the first engine arrived, a young firefighter stepped out. "Sir, we got a report of a structure fire here?" Ethan flashed his badge. "Not anymore. This wasn't an accident," the rookie frowned. "Then what was it?" Ethan's eyes hardened. "A cover-up." He turns back toward his house and spots Linda Pratt standing across the street, arms folded, watching him. She smiles faintly and walks away. That night, Ethan sat in his home office, the USB plugged into an encrypted state system. The files loaded slowly, layers of hidden folders, each one revealed more. Inspection forms, financial ledgers, and spreadsheets connecting the HOA to consulting firms across 3 counties, all using falsified fire compliance fees, and the header on every document read, "Authorized by Deputy Marshal Grant Reeves." Ethan froze. Reeves wasn't just any deputy, he was his former partner. The man who had vouched for him years ago during his promotion. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number. You're digging where you shouldn't." "Hale." The voice was Reeves, calm, cold. "I'd tell you to stop, but I know you won't. So just know this. Not everyone in uniform works for justice." The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone, emotions simmering into resolve. "Then you forgot who taught you what justice means." He opened his drawer and took out his Marshal field vest, the one he hadn't worn in 5 years. The next morning, a knock came at the door. It was Tara, the young mother from earlier, clutching a grocery bag. "Mr. Hale." They came back. Said if I didn't pay the second fine, they'd report me for endangerment. He looked closer at the bag. Inside, hidden under apples and bread, was a voice recorder. She whispered, "I recorded everything." They sat at his kitchen table as the audio played. Muffled voices, laughter, then one chilling line. "Make sure Hale's house is next. Reeves wants him silenced." Ethan's breath left his lungs like a punch. Tara trembled. "What do we do?" He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We don't run. We don't fight. We expose." He copied the recording, burned it to a drive, and tucked it into his vest. Outside, through the reflection of the kitchen window, he saw a man standing beside his fence, watching. Ethan spent the next 24 hours transforming his house into an evidence vault. Cameras, motion sensors. Audio relays linked to an off-site cloud, every door, every path, every window, monitored. If they came again, they wouldn't just trespass. They'd incriminate themselves. He even planted a decoy, a report folder labeled Confidential State Testimony. Inside it, he placed blank papers and a small GPS tracker. Then he waited. The silence of the night stretched long, until 2:47 a.m. A flashlight beam danced across his backyard. 2 figures climbed the fence, moving toward his office window. Ethan sat in the dark, watching through his monitors. "Come on, take the bait," they broke in. One grabbed the confidential folder and left in a hurry. Ethan smiled grimly, eyes locked on the tracker signal blinking live on his laptop. "Gotcha." The GPS pinged HOA headquarters. By morning, Ethan was already on the phone with his department's integrity division. "Target location verified, 742 Lincoln Parkway. Fraud, impersonation, arson. I'm requesting immediate backup." But the operator hesitated. "Marshal Hale." "That address is already under official lockdown." "Under whose authority?" A pause. "Yours." He froze. Someone had used his credentials again, to block his own investigation. Outside, a black SUV rolled to a stop across the street. "Same one." The passenger door opened, and Reeves stepped out in uniform. He walked up the driveway, slow, deliberate, smiling like a man who already knew he'd won. "You're chasing ghosts, Ethan," he said.
The HOA?
The fines? It's all local enforcement. Stay out of it. Ethan didn't blink. You forge my signature, torch my name, and use my badge. You think I'll walk away? Reeves's smile vanished. You'll be retired before sundown. Reeves turned to leave, but as he did, Ethan slipped his phone into recording mode. Every word captured. By nightfall, Ethan uploaded every file, every recording, every frame of evidence to multiple secured state servers. He wasn't fighting alone anymore. He was broadcasting justice. The system flagged the data for automatic review by the state auditor's office. Once triggered, no one, not even Reeves, could stop it. He sat at his desk, exhausted but alert. Rain began to fall again, tapping the windows like the ticking of a clock running out. Then headlights flashed outside, this time several vehicles. State Fire Command units, and among them his captain, Royce. Royce stepped out, holding up a file. We got your upload, Ethan. It's bad. Reeves is under investigation. Ethan exhaled for the first time in days. So it's over? Royce shook his head. Not yet. HOA board meetings tonight. You'll want to see who signs the last check. Ethan looked toward the glowing community hall at the end of the street, silhouettes moving inside, and whispered, Then, let's finish this fire. The HOA's emergency session took place at dusk. Inside the community hall, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above the murmuring crowd, board members, residents, and 2 uniformed officers at the door. Ethan entered silently, wearing his full Fire Marshal uniform, the one no one had seen him in since his retirement from active field duty. Every head turned. Linda Pratt, the HOA president, froze mid-sentence when she saw him. Marshal Hale, this is a private meeting. Ethan stepped closer. So were the fake inspections. And the arson. And the stolen money. Funny how private you keep things when they're illegal. A ripple of gasps spread. Through the room, he dropped a stack of printed reports on the table. Every document he'd decrypted from the USB and every forged form Reeves had signed. These are your fines, your false signatures, and your embezzlement trail. Every name, every payment, every threat you issued. Linda's face drained of color. But then she laughed, brittle, desperate. You think anyone's going to believe you? You've been off duty for years. You're not. Before she could finish, the double doors swung open. Captain Royce entered, flanked by 2 state auditors and 3 uniformed officers. Correction, Royce said. He's not just a fire marshal. He's our whistleblower. Officers step forward. The board's panic begins. Chaos filled the room like smoke. Residents shouted questions. Phones filmed everything. Royce gestured toward the officers. By order of the State Fire Marshal's office, Linda Pratt, you're under arrest for obstruction, impersonation, and fraud. Linda tried to stand tall, but her voice cracked. You can't do this. You have no proof. Ethan cut her off by clicking play on his phone. The recording of Reeves's visit where he mentioned her name. The sound echoed across the room. Make sure Hale's house is next. Reeves wants him silenced. The crowd gasped. 2 officers moved in. Linda resisted, shouting at the cameras, You don't know who you're dealing with! Ethan stared at her, calm and unflinching. That's where you're wrong. I do. Reeves suddenly appeared in the doorway, in cuffs, escorted by internal affairs. Reeves's eyes met Ethan's across the hall. There was no arrogance left now, just fatigue. Ethan, he said quietly as the officers paused. I didn't start this. They offered me a way out after the budget cuts, money, connections. I thought I could control it. Ethan's jaw clenched. You burned homes and lives to keep your control. Reeves lowered his gaze. I never meant for it to go that far. Ethan shook his head. That's what every fire starter says, right before they smell the smoke. The officers pulled Reeves away. As the hall emptied, Tara, the young mother, approached Ethan with tears in her eyes. You did it. You actually did it. He looked around the ruined meeting room, filled with shattered reputations and broken lies. No, he said softly. We did. Royce handed Ethan an envelope. Governor wants to see you tomorrow. The next morning, Ethan stood outside the state capitol building, sunlight glinting off the stone facade. Inside, he was led to the governor's conference room, where a panel of officials awaited. "Marshal Hale," the governor said, standing to shake his hand, "your investigation just exposed the largest HOA fraud network in the state. We owe you more than thanks." Ethan nodded modestly. "Just did my job," the governor smiled faintly. "You were doing your job, even after we took your badge? That's what integrity looks like." He opened a small case. Inside, a new gold badge gleamed in the light. "Welcome back, Chief Fire Marshal Hale." Ethan's throat tightened. For the first time in years, he felt peace, but also purpose reignited. The governor added, "There's one last thing. Your lake property. You should go see what your neighbors left behind." Evening fell as Ethan's truck rolled back to the lake. The water was calm again, the reflection of the sky rippling softly. But what he saw stopped him cold. The dock was restored, polished, and repaired by the very residents who once ignored him. A small sign read, "For Marshal Hale. Thank you for protecting our homes." He stood there in silence, the sunset bathing the lake in gold. Tara and a few neighbors approached quietly. "We figured after everything you did, you deserved your peace back," she said. Ethan nodded, emotion thick in his throat. "This lake was never about fishing," he said. "It was about what we build when we stop letting fear run our neighborhoods." The faint sound of sirens echoed again. But this time, it wasn't trouble. It was the state convoy arriving. With news, Royce stepped out of the convoy, clipboard in hand. "You'll want to see this, Chief. Cleanup crews found barrels under the HOA storage facility, chemicals used to contaminate your lake." Ethan frowned. "So that's how they planned to scare everyone away from it?" Royce nodded. "Irony is, those same chemicals leaked into their own wells. They poisoned themselves." Ethan sighed, staring at the shimmering water. "Justice doesn't always need a badge. Sometimes it just needs time," Royce chuckled. "You know, the department's already talking about naming the new investigation unit after you." Ethan smiled faintly. "Let's hope they find fewer fires than I did." Royce handed him a letter marked "Confidential." This one came from the federal office. Ethan stood alone on his dock that night, reading the letter by lantern light. It was an invitation to lead a multi-state task force against municipal corruption. He folded it quietly and slipped it into his coat. Behind him, the lake glimmered, no longer poisoned, but alive again. He picked up his old fishing rod, cast the line into the water, and let the ripples spread wide. Somewhere across the shore, the faint glow of a house light flickered out. Peace had finally returned. As the moonlight reflected off his badge, Ethan murmured, "You can fake inspections. You can forge signatures. But you can't fake integrity." The wind whispered across the water, a promise fulfilled.